You're listening to the PR Wind Down Podcast, the show for public relations professionals who are ready to see real change in the PR industry. We are your hosts, April White and Laura Schooler. Let's get ready to wind down.
Laura, how are you?
I'm okay. How are you doing?
I like your shirt.
Thanks. Used to fit a little bit better. Too many pliables. I have to
God.
I'm laying like this.
So funny. Every time I say that, I used to know somebody whose little brother has Asperger's, and his way of telling you he liked you was telling you I like your shirt. That was the way he knew how to tell you, that he
That's funny.
appreciated you or had, warm feelings for you. And so I finally figured it out, because it'd be like, when he'd see you, it'd be random too. Not like I just saw you and like, hey, I like your shirt. Be like in the middle of a dinner or lunch or something. He'd be like, I like your shirt. So somehow when I
That's
said
really
that,
funny.
I know I thought I was telling you like, I like you, Laura. I like you a lot. Isn't that darling?
That's really funny.
That's one of my favorite details. Little Seth. I like your shirt. So should we jump into things I should have been trained on?
Yes.
All right. So today's things I should have been trained on is when to send out or skip a press release for a client. Did you get trained on this?
Well, I don't know if it's a matter of did I get trained on it, but it's a almost constant discussion, right? Well, there's two things I think. The press release is all some clients even know. So like, let's do a press release, and they don't even know really what they're talking about. So you've got that education to provide. And the world has changed. The reason why they say that is because that's a lot of what PR used to be based on. Now there's so many other things with technology and just how the media has changed that press releases are still used and the foundation of, many PR strategies. But they only work in a few scenarios. It's a little bit of a matrix, because if you've got some big, huge, major company that's like a market mover, it probably always works, right? But do you want to be putting out a press release every day of the week?
No.
That's a lot of time.
Not unless you're doing SEO triage and trying to cover something
Well,
up.
right. So that's the other thing. So even if you have a small client that, a press release isn't going to make people stop.
Yeah.
But if that company is as interested in just having a release out on the web for SEO purposes, or to be able to put things on their website just to show that they're doing stuff, then fine. Although those kinds of things can also be handled by using like a blog post or a LinkedIn post, right? So I guess the universe of tools has expanded, and with that, the complexity of making the decision of what to use has also expanded. And what works for one company is not the right decision for another company. And what works for one initiative is not the right decision for another initiative. Although I was not trained, it's an ongoing evolution. And so I feel like I have, in all of my different roles, been quite educated on it.
So are there rules of thumb in your mind for when to send out or not send out a press release?
I feel like it's such a case-by-case scenario. What do you think?
I mean, I would say I generally tell clients that if it's a really big announcement, either a momentum release or a new feature or a new product or something that they want to make sure that announcement lives on in perpetuity online, that's worth putting it out even just for SEO purposes. Same thing for new hires. Like, most people aren't going to write stories about a new executive being hired, but it is the kind of thing that you do want people to be able to find when they search for your company online, right? So it's sort of more of an SEO play to put the release out in that case. I've had a couple of clients who wanted to put out funding announcements, but were not able to include details of the same thing. I had a client recently who decided to put out some news about this incubator that they were doing. And originally when we talked about it, there was a dollar amount attached that was quite impressive.
Mhm.
And then the dollar amount was ripped from the final release.
Oh,
And we decided to put out anyway because it was something that was really important to them. But it was like, this isn't really supposed to go out anymore, right? You've neutered it too much. Like it needs
yeah.
some meat and some details and some facts and some figures and something sexy. And so I think if you're trying to put out a press release and withhold too many facts and details, it's not a good idea. So you have to be prepared if you're going to put out news that you want to feel substantial to substantiate that news with something,
This is something that I've done recently with, startup or lesser known companies who are doing funding announcements or deals, something with more established companies.
Hmm.
And the press releases get watered down. And then it's like, well, this is like not even really even news. You're not giving a point of view, or there's no story here, or there's no big, dollar amount or whatever it
Yep.
is. So what we've done is we've put those press releases out because we wanted to show that we were working with these, big investors or big companies.
Hmm.
And then when we pitched the release, we put everything that they had taken out back in, but didn't put it on the wire. But we were talking to reporters.
Did you get permission to do
No.
that?
Now we didn't we didn't change anybody's quote. You know what I mean? Like for like if the partnering company like redid their quote, we didn't change that because that's literally what their executive said. But a lot of the stuff that got pulled out is they were not comfortable with like, how we were positioning the industry. Because for the startup, they're trying to like, change the industry. For the big company, they exist for the way things, the status quo.
Right.
So we just, put everything in the pitch that had been almost everything in the pitch that had been taken out of the release. And, because then it's just like, well, that's what we talked about. We verbally said these things. It wasn't that we put it out on a release. You can't tell my CEO what he literally can't say out of his mouth.
That is so interesting. So the client knew you were including these details, but the partner did not.
Exactly.
Okay. That's
Yes,
better.
because
I
these
thought
startup,
I
no,
thought
we
you
didn't
were
just
like,
sneak it
yeah,
back in.
we just
We got the green light from our client because they're like, they're like hard charging startups, right?
I see.
It works out fine because, no reporter is going to use everything anyway. So like a bit
Right.
or a piece or whatever. And again, it was like they talked to the CEO. He explained to them how he sees the market. Like you can't control what comes out of this man's mouth, right?
Yeah.
So that was an interesting way to like do the press release to show that we were working with big, established people or companies and get it on the wire that almost said nothing, right? Like a lot of press releases often are not very newsworthy,
Right.
but still got the news value when we did the pitching.
I love it. That's so smart.
But you do have to get the buy-in of your client.
Yes. No,
In
I
writing.
thought I misunderstood. I thought you were basically like, well, the client didn't let us use this, so we just did it anyway. I was like,
No,
oh,
and we got it
shit.
in writing too, because if it came back to bite
Can't do that.
us in the butt, we didn't want it to be
Yeah.
us. We had to be like,
Mm-mm.
we had a whole discussion right here. You said go for it.
Yeah. So in sum, I would say put out a press release for substantial news that you can substantiate. And if it's just a pitch that doesn't have to go on the wire for SEO purposes and or because it's not super major, just save your money and don't put it on the wire for that one.
Well, right. Because then let's explain to people, putting a press release on the wire is very expensive.
It is expensive.
And press releases take a lot of time. You might think, well, what do you mean? I hired a PR firm. Aren't they good at writing? They should be able to bang this out in an hour and a half. That might be. It always takes a little longer than you think. But then I can't tell you how many times, especially when you've got more than you and your client, it takes forever to get it where everybody's happy with it.
Yeah.
It will go around and around. And just when you think that all the edits are done, somebody flies in and there's more edits and has to be reapproved. I mean, this stuff can take 3 and 4 weeks.
Yes.
So you're spending a whole lot of time, which equals money, on releases. It's not just an hour and a half exercise ever.
Agreed. Well, I see Ray in our waiting room. Should I let her in?
Yes.
Okay. There's some cat hair in my nose. Hey, Ray.
Hey, I came in at the right time. I heard cat hair in my nose.
It's like so itchy.
Happens to me all the time.
got-
My white cat sheds like crazy.
Oh my God. And he's just like asleep on, actually, you can see his paw. Look.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Mine does the same thing and my husband gets all mad. He's like, "Hey, get off my wife's boobs." Yeah.
So he's
So
asleep
cute.
like a little baby on his back on my lap. And then he's got his little paw here. And then it's like every once in a while I'm like, oh, so itchy.
He's a happy camper.
He's so happy. Anyway, welcome, Ray. What a weird introduction.
I love it. I love it.
Our guest today is Ray Cornell. She is the CEO and content strategist at Cornell Content Marketing, and she has other side things she's going to tell us about. But in the meantime, she is here to discuss why it can be beneficial to be polarizing as a brand, why a business and by extension your PR strategy should be designed to suit you, not the other way around, and why you should never be asked to change in order to succeed, especially in PR and marketing. Welcome, Ray.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me, April.
Yeah, it's so good to have you. We're super excited. So first, because I know there's other things that you have that you're doing, can you briefly explain your background and all the things that you're doing so people have context for why you're an expert in all of these topics?
Yeah. So I've been doing copywriting and content creation for over 15 years now. And over that time, I went from being a solopreneur to building up an agency. And once I was running my agency, at our biggest, we had about 25 team members and decided to scale down after a while. And that's a whole other story. But I was mentoring a lot of the freelancers who were on my team. And so over time, I decided to completely separate out those mentoring programs that just kind of naturally evolved by things like, I was getting pissed off when my writers would tell me that they wanted $20 for a blog post. I'm like, that's way too low. Are you like eating top ramen for dinner every single night? This is not acceptable. And so we just kind of naturally fell into this mentoring role. And I ended up building my second business, Chiron Consulting, which is a business mentoring and training platform for people who are self-employed as creatives, like writers, designers, photographers, VAs, social media managers, all that creative, fun digital stuff.
So cool. I love it. It's such a good backstory too.
Thanks.
Awesome. So let's dive into the first one about why it can be beneficial to be polarizing as a brand.
Yeah.
Tell us your thoughts on that. Why is it beneficial and what do you mean by polarizing?
Yeah. So, what I mean by that is so many people, especially nowadays, they're afraid to say anything because they're afraid of either alienating themselves or maybe making a potential client upset or not like them, or making someone who could potentially refer business to them upset or not like them. Like they're just so afraid of the what ifs that they end up saying nothing. And what happens when you do that, when you just say nothing, when you're just trying to appease everybody, is you are like a white plastic spoon. You're just you're generic. There's no style to you. There's no flavor to you. There's just nothing of substance there for anybody to say, "Ooh, I like that. I want that. That fits into my collection. That doesn't."
Mm,
And so in the process of trying not to push people away, you're actually just putting yourself in a silo and
mhm,
isolating yourself. Whereas
mhm,
if you talk about the things that you actually care about, when you get polarizing on particular topics, and an example is I'm very involved in the freelance community, the self-employed entrepreneur kind of world. Being a W-2 employee is just a foreign language to us. Like that's my
mhm,
little community. I'm not super outgoing, but I get really loud about things like Upwork and Fiverr and these platforms that are just completely destroying our little world of creative freelance. And those things sometimes make people mad. And so it's those sorts of things where if you aren't taking a stand on anything, then you're just invisible. And even
mhm.
speaking up about something that may be completely irrelevant to one person who might be hearing you, it gives you something of substance that they can then remember about you.
Mhm. What do you hate about Upwork and Fiverr? Just quickly.
Oh my God, quickly. we would need an hour. It's a bid to the bottom site. It's just like vampiric the way that Upwork and Fiverr take 20% of these hard earned earnings from doing creative work. And then at the same time, these creatives are being forced to lower their rates to get the job because it's all about who can do the work in the fastest time frame for the lowest price. And then they don't even get that, $25 for a
Right.
blog post or
Mm,
$50 for a logo. They don't even get that. They get 80% of that. It's just sick and disgusting in my
yeah.
opinion. It's very exploitative.
It's so what you were saying actually touches on two things that I like to talk about, which is funny because they're juxtaposed. But one is that I agree that to attract people to you that are like you have to be authentic, right? So you have
Yeah.
to actually be yourself. On the other hand, I actually also don't think it's very wise as a brand to be too out there with socio-political issues. And I know this is going against the grain because most people are like, oh, every brand should get out there and throw their hat in, with all of the social movements that are
Take a
happening.
stand.
They take a stand and it's their responsibility. But I actually disagree. It's funny because it's like it sounds like those are opposing views, but I don't think they are. Do you?
No, I don't think they are. And the reason why is because you want to be polarizing for a purpose. You don't want to be polarizing just to get people riled up and, you don't want to just be a troll online and with your
Jump on the
marketing and with your PR.
bandwagon.
Yeah, there's no point. So, for example, within my businesses, there's no point in me talking about politics. There's absolutely no point. It does me no good because the people I want to work with, I don't care what their political views are.
Right.
But the people I want to work with, they do have views on healthy work boundaries and how much they should earn. And I'm talking about the current consulting side where I
Right.
work with freelancers. I do want to work with people who care more about building a healthy, happy, profitable business that can be sustained for years and years and years. And I mean, I've been at this 15 years. I want
Mhm.
people who want that. So it serves me to be polarizing about things like that. It serves me none to be polarizing about politics.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, and it's different. I mean, that it's different to be yourself. I think too many people over identify with a movement as being part
Yeah.
of self, right? Because I think that we're individualistic people who each have our own gifts and special talents and personalities and personas and critical thinking skills, like all of those
Yeah.
things, right? And we're very complex and layered and have lots of different life experiences and perspectives. And I think losing that is not a great thing either. So,
Looking at your PR strategy, your marketing strategy, you have to remember, especially in this day and age, everything is permanent. So, with that in mind, when you align yourself to a group is naturally going to evolve over time. And you, as an individual, you're going to evolve over time. And if those two evolutions are divergent, you don't want to associate yourself with something that
100%.
may not be aligned in the future.
100%.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Even political parties, right? The
Yeah.
the values shift and things like that. And then suddenly if you're identified as this kind of a political party and suddenly it stands for something different, well, oh boy, you know?
Right. Right. And PR and marketing and public opinion is not that forgiving. People aren't forgiving in that way. They respect
Mhm.
personal growth and you owning what has changed over the course of your life. They assign a lot of permanence to you aligning yourself with groups and movements and political parties and things like that.
Mhm. I agree with that. So when we get into the next piece, why a business and by extension your PR strategy should suit you and not the other way around. I feel like they're interconnected here. Am I right?
Yeah, yeah, they are. And when I talk about business strategy and building your custom, business model and things like that, you are the only constant thing in your life. And ultimately, you have to decide what you want your life to look like. And a lot of us left the corporate world, that like W 2 life, because we were being forced into a company's boxes. We were being told you have to show up at this time, you have to do your work in this way, you have to use these systems, you have to use these tools. So then when you see all these ads running on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram, and people are popping into your DMs and sending you all this stuff like, oh, you've got to buy my 10x your business,
Yep.
template sales funnels and all of these things, you're just forcing yourself back into those boxes that you wanted to get away from.
Mhm.
And the thing with PR and marketing and attracting in your audience is when someone walks into a room, when someone shows up on camera, when they are on a podcast appearance, when they're hosting a webinar, their energy is what gets people to say, yes, I like that person, or, oh, I don't think I'm in the right place. But
Mm-hmm.
if you are forcing yourself to do everything that other people say you should do, like, oh, you have to run a webinar and you have to push really hard for sales at the end of that webinar and get them to buy into your high ticket program, if that's the kind of model that's being prescribed on you, your energy is going to be flat, as opposed to you just showing up, doing what feels good for you, what makes you feel most comfortable, what gets you excited. And then your natural energy comes out and people are drawn to that.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that. It is interesting how much is conveyed over video
Yeah.
in terms of somebody's demeanor, personality, energy, all of those things. I mean, I
Yeah.
still haven't met Laura in person, weirdly enough, but I know I would have zero surprises.
Yeah, and that's what you want. You don't
Yeah.
want to, let's say someone uses marketing strategy or a funnel that they bought, something where they're like, book out your coaching calendar with this sales system and whatnot. They use the system, they show up in one way, and then when it comes time to actually do their work, they show up in a completely different way. And their clients or their customers are having massive buyer's remorse
Mhm.
because they feel like it was a bit of a bait and switch. They're like, I bought apples and I got oranges. This doesn't feel
Mhm.
good. And so not only do you then have increased refund requests and things like that, people who just drop out of your programs or stop working with you, stop buying your services, but also you have to then heal the client expectations and customer expectations.
Yeah, exactly. For sure.
Isn't it like the holy grail to be able to, bring your real self or whole self to work? Do you have any, I don't know, case study, example, or advice on how to be able to do that? Because I still feel like even if you don't work like for somebody, you still have clients, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're not always going to see eye to eye. And there's times at which you sort of have to maybe not say what you would want it, what you really want to say,
Like
or
put
do
on
what
your
you really
professional
want to
hat.
do. How do you avoid, I guess, at least getting stuck in a rut where you're doing it
Mm.
repeatedly?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I get that you have to kind of walk this line between being a real person and being a professional. And the way that I've kind of evolved in my way of doing this over the years is to really blur that line a little bit, have some human, non business, non buttoned up qualities injected into your very first interactions with
Yeah.
someone. So, for example, I just had my non sleazy sales tactics for creative entrepreneurs workshop, and I explain exactly how I handle sales calls. And in that process, I like to make whoever I'm talking to laugh. Whatever it is, some silly little joke. I like to make people laugh
Good
on
one.
that initial sales call so that they can expect that I'm not always going to be so buttoned up, so
Mhm.
professional, so like closed off. I'm going to be a real person and they can talk to me about silly little icebreaker things like that.
I have found, April will be so surprised, that there are people who I have worked for, whether it be their company or they were just like the senior person, because I do that,
Yeah.
what you're saying, and it makes them so uncomfortable and they think I'm a lunatic.
Yeah. Well, then those aren't people that you want to work with.
Yeah.
So it's a good vetting process too.
I mean, I think as a business leader, what I've seen over the years and even experienced myself is that you attract to you people that are like you, right? So
Yes.
clients and employees. And you can see it at companies where the lead person is emotionally unstable,
Mhm.
a little bit back and forth, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, like those kinds of personalities.
Mhm.
And typically they attract either people that are sort of have like a victim complex and just sort of go along with it, and
Mhm.
or people that are also equally unstable, right? And so when you see that, it's like, oh, they're doing that because they're like that, and it creates a bigger and bigger cycle of the same personality.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think as a leader, it's important to get yourself right first, right? And then once you do that, then your issues don't get magnified by every layer of complexity you add to your organization, because
Yeah.
otherwise all you do is just create a bigger and bigger version of your own dysfunction, creating, like I said, like, layers.
Exponential.
Yeah, it's like an
Yeah.
exponential version of your own psychology and
Right.
malfunction, right? It's like,
Yeah.
so it's very important to get that right. But I've seen that when people get it right, then they do attract people like them to them, right? And
Yeah.
it was really interesting. Last week I talked to my first prospect who had seen my TEDx talk, which is not really all that corporate and not really all that, designed to be a sales tool. But he saw it and he said, I've been pitched by so many different PR firms and I haven't wanted to talk to any of them. But I saw your TEDx talk and it really resonated with me. And so I decided I wanted to talk to you. I didn't go out there to do that as a sales technique. I went out there because I felt like I had something to share that was important. And my hope is that more of that will happen, right? So
Yeah.
it'll
Yeah.
attract more employees and clients that have a similar approach to self, approach to life, approach to same values, right? Like same humanity in the world, et cetera, right? So I like your point a lot, because I think that the more that you're true to yourself, the more that you get like-minded people, et cetera, to
Right.
be part
And
of the fold.
so many people think that they have to compromise. They think that they have to settle. They think, oh, this is just the way the world works, or oh, this is just the
Mm,
way that business is done. But business is done however you do business. And
Right.
mhm.
I mean, we're working on a planet with what, 6 billion people now? You can find people. How many people do you need? Do you need 2 people? Do you need 6 people? Do you need 50 people? You
Yeah,
can find the people that you need,
your
but it all
people.
starts with you have to be real. You have to be you. You
Mm,
have to set the standard of what you're willing to allow and not allow into your
mm,
business. And I mean, going back to the beginning of this point, one thing that I won't allow in my business is clients who aren't willing to take a joke and who don't
right.
want to, have some lightness and levity to our conversations. And now, whatever you decide you want in your business and whoever's listening to this, that's what you can have, but you
Hmm.
have to make that decision and then set the boundaries. Yeah.
Set the boundaries.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
so if that means you have a baby cat asleep on your lap, like showing his fuzzy feet on screen, it's like,
Then
it is what
that's
it
the
is.
new rule.
But
Yeah.
you know what? It also tells people something, right? It
Yeah.
tells them that I am very patient and that I'm like loving and that I take care of people and creatures, right? Because
Yeah.
otherwise I would be throwing the cat on the floor because I'd be more worried about appearances than the creature, right? So, I mean,
Exactly.
people pick up a lot of information from small things like that.
It gives them a point
Hmm.
to open the door to connecting with you.
Hmm.
And ultimately, that's what being visible is all about, is just
Yep.
allowing people to connect with you.
Hmm. I agree.
And that accomplishes that.
Yeah, for sure. So, to your last point, why should you never be asked to change in order to succeed, especially in PR and marketing?
Being in business for yourself has this crazy topsy turvy effect of making you grow up faster. And so you're naturally going to go on this evolution of your own. I look back on conversations that I had early in my journey and I'm like, oh my God, that's so embarrassing. I can't
Mm,
believe I used to do that. Or you can't believe I used to say that. I can't believe my website looked like that or my logo looked like that. But that's how I got to where I am here. And it's a
mhm,
natural, organic evolution. And it's one that makes sense.
mhm,
Whereas if you're working with someone who's like, you need to change this, this, and this about you, it's going to be such a departure from what's actually true that you're
Hmm.
going to lose those people who, if you had just stayed the course and gone on your continuation of your own natural
Right.
evolution, you would have connected with them and you would have related to them because they went through the same growing
mm,
pains as you did. Those are the people that you want. You don't want the people who
mhm.
want the fake facade.
Right, right. It's funny because I I was just showing my boyfriend these old music videos that I did, and they're
The
pretty
music videos, I love it.
pretty embarrassing, and also pretty crazy. And he's
Ugh.
like, "Are these online? Like people can find these? Like your clients could see this?" And I was like, "I mean, if they looked, I guess so." was like, is that okay? And I was like, it's where I came from. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to hide it. Like, that's who I was for a while, and I've evolved. And, I'm not going to try to whitewash my past, because
No
Right.
pun
it,
intended.
it's, but it's, I mean, not that I'm going to go out and point clients to these crazy videos either, but, but
Yeah.
it's like, I still think, people need to kind of wear their evolution as a badge of honor in a way, right? Like, they shouldn't be ashamed. I mean, yes, there are things that I did that I wouldn't ever do again or recommend anyone else do, many of them, but it's like it's like I learned lessons from those that have
Right.
made me the human I am now, right? And
Right.
they make me
Yeah.
more empathetic and more dimensional, and I understand people from all walks of life because, oh yeah, well, I did that for a bit, and I was over here for a bit, and like, oh yeah, I had that problem for it's like those are the kinds of things though that make you relatable, to your point.
What you've done in the past has ripple effects
Mm-hmm.
to today. And so when people are looking for PR help and marketing help, I cringe when they sign up with these agencies that want to change their identity for the sake of a brand. And
Mm-hmm.
instead, you should be choosing people who are encouraging you on your path of evolution that you're already on. Because if you think building your own personal brand makes you grow up fast and building your own business makes you grow up fast, becoming visible, that's a whole other level of personal
Mm-hmm.
evolution.
Yeah.
And there are people out there like someone that we both know, Taryn Reeves, the
Mm-hmm.
publisher at Four Eagles Publishing. We had some heart to hearts when we were doing a book together earlier this year. And she was telling me, hey, I think you still have some healing to do around this one particular issue that I talked about in my chapter. She
Mm-hmm.
wasn't telling me what to do, but she was giving me that loving nudge of, hey, if you want to be more visible and you want to kind of break down these barriers and resistance that I think you're
Mm.
feeling, this is my advice for you. And she did it in that very supportive way. And I wish that's what everyone who's looking for PR and marketing support
Mm-hmm.
would do.
Right. I love that. I love that. Aw. This is such, I mean, that's a good note to end on. Laura, do you have any final questions? I definitely want to have Ray plug her books and whatever else she wants to plug.
And no, let us know what do you have going on? What are these books?
Okay, so there's one book out right now that's Corporate Dropouts. So if you really resonated with what we talked about at the beginning, like leaving the world of being an
Corporate
employee and all
America
of that, leaving
or
corporate
corporate
America.
world, corporate global, doesn't have to be America.
Right, exactly. Yes, good point. Corporate global.
Corporate
A
Earth.
lot of the authors in that book are actually from the UK and Australia and
Yeah.
just all over. Corporate Dropouts is the book that came out earlier this year. Has some amazing stories in there. And then, yeah, if you want answers to all your copywriting and brand voice questions, you can check me out at Cornell Content Marketing. And if you're trying to build a business and you're trying to figure out all the pieces to make it totally custom to you, you can find me at chironconsulting.us.
I love it. Are you writing a new book too? Did I make that up in my head?
No, you're not. You're not.
Okay, but you can't talk
Full of it.
about it.
I can. It's going to be a new multi-author book with the same publisher, Four Eagles Publishing, and it's called She Speaks. So I'm doing a chapter in that book, and then I'm also working on a solo book.
Nice. Holy
Wow.
cow. So you
Well, I
have
write
no
for a
free
living,
time.
so I have no excuse, right? Like I should be able to write a book, shouldn't I?
Hey,
Okay, fair.
April, did you see that I was published in the Wall Street Journal last week?
What?
What?
No.
You missed my story?
I'm so sorry. You didn't tell me.
I know it's I put it all over social media,
I
so
know, but I'm
didn't wanna,
stink
I
at
know, I'm
social
sure.
media.
That's
I'm
So
sorry.
huge.
yeah, it there was a question about basically they wanted to hear from people about how their most memorable sports moment. And
Yes.
so it's this long article with like, I don't know, 14 or 15 people's stories. And most of them are like, oh, I was, at the 1960 World Series with my grandfather, whatever. But mine was, I think, the only one out of all of them that wasn't about like a big, national or international sports moment they remember. It was about like my experience, like playing sports as a young kid and what that meant and how important I think it is, especially to like, younger girls to be on a team. And so it was like it was the closing story of the whole thing. So I'll have to make sure I'll send it your way.
Yeah,
But
send it to me. That's amazing.
yeah.
That's
So,
awesome.
Congrats.
but I heard that
Congratulations.
you said that you were
Look at you
writing. I
go.
was like, and that's my whole thing. Like, finally, on the other on the other side of the byline, right? Up front, not behind the scenes.
Not behind the
I
scenes.
love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's huge. Congrats.
That is amazing. Ray, any final questions for us? No pressure. You don't have to have one. We asked you all the questions. So this is your moment if you have a question for us.
Because I have this problem. What's
Mm.
your best work from home tip when working with a cat? Because mine likes to come in at exactly 5 o'clock every day and meow his little face off. No matter if he has food, water, nothing, he just wants attention. And he will come in and he will like hop on my desk and knock things off of my desk. He will do all the things to annoy me and get my attention. And you are somehow making the cat mom thing work. How do you do it?
So if I have a very important call or I have a habitual issue like that, I will actually put this one because he's always the troublemaker. He's like wants to be on my lap the whole day. I'll actually put him in a room and shut the door.
Just isolate the problem.
Yeah, because there's no way around. I mean, otherwise you're gonna spray. You can spray him with water. That's like the best way. I mean, that's what I do when he gets in my plants, which sometimes happens. I have a spray bottle on my desk, and I do this, and I spray him. I don't want to not let him on my lap, right? So I don't want to teach him not to get on my lap because it's cute and sweet, but I don't need him there all the time. Like, is there somebody behind you right now? Is that a cat?
That's my dog.
Oh.
So he's the one who's actually being a problem right now. I'm bitching about my cat, but he's actually the one who's causing problems right now.
He's so cute. What kind of dog is that?
He's a pit bull mix. Come here.
I love puppies. I love all animals. He's so cute. Hi, babe. Oh my God, he's so handsome. Oh, look at this.
Oh, someone wants attention.
He's like, I'm handsome too.
And there's a cat in the background.
In the back too.
Yeah, that's hunting. I know.
Yeah, my cat came in, got some food, and left.
It's animal hour.
It's fine.
We'll continue this podcast with a guest appearance from Alton.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Ray. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.
Bye.
I thought that was really interesting.
That was an interesting discussion with Ray.
It was a very interesting discussion with Ray. Would you like to get into our PR news of the week or our horror story? What do you feel like?
Well, I don't know if you saw the Slack, but I have a baseball PR story.
I didn't have a chance to read it, so enlighten me and our listeners on what happened today.
Well, so the problem is, right, by the time this comes out, who knows what will have happened. But the latest story is Josh Donaldson on the Yankees and Tim Anderson on the White Sox don't really get along.
Okay.
And the other day, Josh Donaldson called him Jackie, like as in Jackie Robinson.
Uh-oh.
And so now there's been back and forth, like, that was racist. Was it racist? It's not racist.
Oh, no.
The joke, I guess, that he was sort of dig, whatever, that Josh Donaldson was trying to make to Tim Anderson, who is Black, is that in 2019, Tim Anderson, in an article, called himself Jackie Robinson. And so he was sort of making fun of him, like, really, dude? Like, okay, Jackie. Anyway, Major League Baseball suspended Josh Donaldson for doing this.
Oh my God.
And the coach of the White Sox said that he thought it was racist. Tim Anderson himself never used the word racist. He said he thought it was disrespectful. And now all over, Yankee, White Sox baseball Twitter, you got the people who are saying Josh Donaldson should not only be suspended, he should be thrown out of baseball forever. Then other people saying, oh my God, these are just guys like going at it because that's what they do. You get to try to get under each other's skin, your competitors, etc.
Right.
And then there's definitely a number of people who are like, Josh Donaldson is, an idiot. He's a jerk. Nobody really likes him. Regardless if it's racist or not, he's a jerk. He's the kind of guy, he just started playing with the Yankees this year. He's really good, and he's the kind of guy that you hate unless he's on your team. So I have been discussing this, but staying Switzerland about it because I don't think that there's a winning answer. So from a PR perspective, what is the least bad answer? Because there's no good answer, because you're always going to isolate or piss somebody off here. Now, Josh Donaldson did say on camera, I apologize if, he didn't, I thought it was a joke between he and I've said it to him before. I apologize. And if he wants to talk to me about it, I'm willing to talk to him, but I don't think he wants to talk to me.
Mm.
But then other people are saying, well, he doesn't really like you. You guys aren't friends. So how's that a joke?
Mm-hmm.
So he is appealing the decision to suspend. It's only 1 game suspension, but he also is getting fined. I don't know how much. So he is appealing that decision, and we'll see what happens. And I don't really like, again, from PR, like, so for Major League Baseball, what's the best thing they should have done? From Josh Donaldson's point of view, what's the best thing he could have done? From the Yankees. So the manager of the Yankees said, I don't think he meant it in that way, but he should have not said it.
Mm-hmm.
So now the more that I'm talking about it, I think everything that everybody did was as best as they could have responded to it.
I mean, I think that, politics and sports go together like, pickles and peanut butter jelly. Like, I don't know why you would put that in that, but
Right.
it's like.
Well, I mean, the Jackie Robinson, obviously that was political, right? Back in whatever it was, the 50s, when he joined Major League Baseball. And that's because, this country was founded on some pretty messed up economic decisions and political ideologies that will haunt us forever. And people are way more sensitive to these things now, and it's permeated way more aspects of life now, and there's no gray area to people.
The blending of social and political issues with everything, right? That's what I'm not. I mean, which is kind of the point I was making earlier about, I don't necessarily think that brands should throw their hat in the ring every time there's a social political issue, right? They just look opportunistic, and they risk associating themselves with something that, to Ray's point, could shift and change dramatically and in not so big of an amount of time, right? I mean, even with the, all those companies that were firing people that weren't vaccinated and things like that, and it's like, and now vaccinations seem to be kind of a non-issue. I mean,
relative to where it was,
relative to what it was, right? I mean, I'm not trying to say it's not important, but it's like that's the hill they chose to die on. And then, like, 6 months later, why die on a hill that might disappear, right? So
right. Like, but the race issue is never going to disappear, right?
No. But why would he say that, right? Why would he even bring that into it? And then why did it have to go all the way to Spinal Tap 11, right? Couldn't it just be like, oh, he said something shit, like?
Well, right, and that's what it used to be, right? It used to be that. Like, you make fun, you say, oh, I slept with your mom last night, right? Now it's like, oh my God, you hate women or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, there's no banter, there's no joking allowed. Mm-hmm. However, is it ever funny for a white guy to say something incendiary about race to a black guy?
No. There's no good reason for that.
So
he messed up, but then of course the response, like, is the response in kind? I don't know. Like, don't say that, but also, should we react with that level of, like,
vitriol? Yeah, and if you watched him, he was like, I'm sorry. Like, I would have to say, from a PR perspective, and this is just a baseball player. This is not like, some politician who's been trained how to speak and answer questions. He did a really good job. But so many people are like, oh my God, he should be out of baseball. Watch what you say.
My approach to a lot of this stuff in both personal relationships and professional is just to be a little bit less dramatic and a little, like, more matter of fact about it. Maybe even, like, embody the masculine energy. You know how guys used to just kind of, like, hit each other and then they were cool?
Yeah.
Like, I just kind of wish as a society we would embrace.
Celebrate.
Yeah, like that energy or approach to things, right? Like, hey, didn't really like how you talked to me in that meeting. Let's not do that moving forward. Sorry, man. Right?
Yeah.
Move on. It's cool. And then we're cool. Like,
right.
I like that direct, non-emotional response. They're going to punish themselves. I mean, this is a good example. He says that, people find out. That's enough punishment.
Right. Because a lot of people think he sucks. Right.
So
He just
why
tarnished his own.
he just did it to himself, let him
Yeah.
hang himself. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, he gave himself enough rope. Why
Yeah.
the response that's potentially not in kind, meaning it's doesn't match the action.
Right. You bring a cannon to a knife fight. Right.
Right. And I'm sure people disagree and they think it is equal,
Well, they
right? But
do.
there are
That's the,
lots of people who don't. So it's like, why not just let him just
make
do it?
himself look
Yeah.
foolish and
And then move on and be the bigger person. I mean, Chris Rocket, you know what I mean?
yeah.
I mean, that's a good
Yeah.
example of like how a masculine
Yeah.
response, and masculine can be from a
Right. And Chris
female or
Rock came
male,
out so
but
much
he
on
did,
top.
yeah, because he was just like, all right, like, wow, that was extreme, moving
Right.
on.
Right. You made yourself look like an idiot and I don't even need to do anything. And your whole career is going to be buried. I don't need
Mhm.
to say a thing.
And if
What's that
Chris had
whole,
responded,
then the energy would have come back on him. And then everybody's like, ah, right. It's like,
and
when your
Will
enemy is
Smith would have gotten a pass more so
right. Cause he would have
by
engaged
extension.
on the same level.
Yep.
It's like when your enemy is making a mistake, don't interrupt him kind of
Yep.
thing. Right. But now the coach stepped in and MLB stepped in and and it's just
Stay
like a
out of it.
circus.
Like,
Yeah.
why is everybody in everybody's business? Just like, go do your thing. I do my thing. You stay out of my business. I stay out of your business. You do something shit.
Yeah.
I set a boundary, or I don't, or I get over it. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like, it doesn't need to be, not everything needs to be some dramatic cancel culture like
Right.
show. It's like circus, like Five-Ring circus. But
Well,
anyway.
I will close with this. Tim Anderson is hot.
That is
But
not where
Josh
I thought that
Donaldson
was
is on the
going.
Yankees. So
So funny.
So I'm looking at this, the one of the stories about think carefully before you quote tweet.
Yep.
The Guardian newspaper based in the UK
Yep.
released social media guidelines for staff saying we strongly encourage staff to regularly delete historical tweets and other social posts. I mean, on the face of it, that sounds cuckoo to me.
Okay, let me, so think
I don't
carefully.
even know how to go back, like 8 years to be like, oh, I shouldn't have said that in 2000.
I mean, it's funny because it flies exactly in the face of what Ray and I were talking about. And
Right.
you were
The
talking
evolution.
the evolution of a person,
Right.
and that it shows your growth and dimensionality.
Yep.
It's like, why are you whitewashing your past so that you fit the current? Is it so that you fit the party line of the current reality or something, and you don't show any growth or dimension or mistakes? I mean, I don't love that.
I mean,
think
I
that,
suppose it's because so many people get in such hot water based on things they, posted when they were 19.
I don't, the answer isn't fixing what's there. The answer is we should calm the F down
Yeah.
and stop being so emotional and reactionary to literally everything. Not everything is a big effing deal. Like,
Yeah.
I just don't think the answer isn't, falling into line and never showing any weakness. I think people need to just be more empathetic and stop demanding that everyone has it perfect at every single moment of their timeline of their life. That's not realistic.
And imagine spending all your time like reviewing your old tweets. I mean, some people tweet, 40,000 times a year.
I do not like this, emotional trigger happy society that's
Yep.
embracing deleting everything that might get anyone canceled from any
Misconstrued.
moment of their time that could have been. I mean,
Out of context, out of.
well, and when you meet people in real life, that's not what you want, right? You want to meet like, I just met somebody that I think is super rad, and there were like big blocks of his life that he didn't want to talk about, right?
Right.
And it was like, I relate to you. It's like, yeah, I did this thing. It was probably messed up. It got me fired. It's like, okay, like that's a person that I trust because they're authentic. They're not hiding anything. There's like this other thing feels like, well, what are you hiding that you deleted all of your tweets from 2018 or whatever, right? Like, what I'd rather see somebody, and it's like, any good parent knows that you're gonna mess up. Their kids are gonna mess up, and that's how they grow and learn. You
Hmm.
can't keep them from making any mistakes. That's how we
It's
evolve
not
and learn as
realistic. It's
individuals.
not
It's
right.
also how we evolve and learn as a society. So why go back and pretend that your hair didn't look horrible at your prom and delete all the photos
Right.
when that's part of what made you who you are? I just
Right.
don't. I don't.
To
I
make
don't.
sure your hair looks good all the time.
And I mean, it's funny because it's like, should I go back and delete all the music videos where I look like an idiot?
Right. And so it's like, you know what? Just delete Twitter, delete all social media from existence. Just like blow it up then, because are all 6 billion people on the planet going to go back and delete their old tweets? I mean, enough already. I agree with you.
It's super super crazy. I don't like it. All right, what's our
I
last?
think that this generation, of the younger, super woke generation, and in many regards, I am right there with them on certain things, like the way they feel they should be treated at work. And there's a lot of things that I'm like, yeah, I was saying that 25 years ago, but everybody thought I was crazy. I was, so ahead of my time.
Mhm.
But a lot of these things are coming from younger generations, the sort of cancel stuff. I mean, a lot of them are still like not even adult. Like, what your brain keeps growing till you're 25 or something. So let's see until
33.
all right. So let's see when they're 35. Like maybe they're going to back down a little bit off of this like moral high horse, because I
Right?
think that they will realize as they go through life that it just isn't
It's not so simple.
rational. And you can't. What was the word you used?
Simple. It's not that simple.
No, and it's not rational, and
Mhm.
it's yeah, life goes in many different directions, and once you start living through it more and more and more, you realize ultimately that you're just lucky to be alive at some point.
No, and the older you get, the more you realize you don't know anything.
Yeah,
I mean, I thought I had everything figured out. I had nothing.
right.
Nothing
Yeah.
at
And then just
28.
wait till like everybody starts dying and stuff. Like that kind of stuff just is not important anymore in the same way that it
Yeah.
was when it was your whole life. There's just so many things that happen that are more important in life than what, your next door neighbor tweeted at you 8 years ago.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Hopefully people wake up to it instead of it becoming like more and more of like the
Of
reality.
that, I know.
Well, this is what we get for being born humans. We should all be kitties. What do we have next?
Let's see. You want to read the horror story of the day?
Yes, I'm going to read today's horror story.
Okay, let's hear
Are
it.
you ready?
Yep.
Hi, guys. I recently started freelancing as a PR and event consultant after having worked in house for most of my career. And I've really been loving the change and the challenge. But my independent client roster is still growing, baby steps, and I am having a hell of a time with one of my clients. This guy runs a small startup and he's hosting a webinar next month to promote his tax software solution. He wants me to help him achieve 100 attendees, but the problem is that he wants to charge them $50 to attend this event. I just don't think that's going to happen, but he won't hear it. He's a new, no name entrepreneur, and this tax solution is not riveting stuff. And he's not giving anything away for free at this webinar other than financial planning information and an overview of his tech solution. I tried to explain that most webinars would do better at this stage if they were free, but he's not hearing it. In his words, he's putting in too much work for people not to pay to attend the event. He won't even agree to offer a free demo for the attendees. I'm at my wit's end trying to explain reality to this guy. Help. I mean, nobody's paying for anything online.
Yeah.
So this guy is wrong. Wrong. Lose, lose, lose. So I would like to tell this person since obviously the client is not listening and doesn't sound like he's going to listen, I don't want them to spend too much time because then that's a big waste. But, spend 2 hours or something inviting people to this $50 event and see how many people sign up or agree to come. And when 0 sign up, then you say, it's hard enough to get people to attend free events. There's no way people are going to pay basically for a sales webinar, right?
Yeah.
To just like prove your point.
It's really hard. I mean, I feel like you could explain to him that you could use the initial webinar as a sales funnel to then create a workshop that's paid or something like that, see how many people, but you should be viewing the webinar as the lead gen tool
Right.
for something like that, right? But a webinar itself is not something people are going to pay for. A workshop, maybe.
Right.
Or an online course.
Right.
But do
After
that
they've
after.
attended your webinar, then maybe they'll be so interested to get more, then you charge them. I think that's brilliant. However, how do you even get people to attend a webinar for free? It's really hard. And it's not really PR, it's social media to me, it's marketing.
I mean, it's both, but
nobody's writing an article that, it's not media relations.
not unless you have some kind of extremely famous guest or notable panelist or something like that. But if it's just you, I don't know.
I mean, it's something that should even be, maybe you could do a live thing, but it should really be done to be pre-recorded and then released on social media. You use it to get people to watch it and then capture their, email addresses or whatever, and then market to them later. Yeah, but I have this feeling it's going to go one of two ways. Either the client says, well, you stink and I'm resigning you. And then you say, well, fine, you were, never going to learn anyway. Or maybe, the client sees the light and will finally go on in your advised direction. Mm-hmm. But either way, that's really hard to start from ground zero and expect that people are going to pay for intellectual property.
My bigger concern would be, does the client not respect your counsel, that they won't listen to you, that's not a good idea? That's not a recipe for a long-term successful relationship.
Exactly. This sounds like a client who should hire an executive assistant and tell them to go try to do this, and it won't work either.
Not a strategic counselor.
Right. But at least then you have hired somebody to do the work that you want done instead of hiring a strategic counsel and then not listening to them. It's always interesting, as we talked about it before, like how often do people go to the mat with a lawyer and say, no, this is how they should conduct a case. But usually you hire the lawyer or you hire the dentist or whatever, and they tell you what has to be done. You don't go in and do your own filling, and you don't go in and represent yourself in court. Why do you think that you're going to go in and do your own PR when you've hired somebody who's been doing it for 10, 20 years? Maybe our profession needs to have a higher education requirement that I'm grandfathered out of.
But I did have a thought for a while. This could still happen. I did like the idea of giving out a trust relations badge to people that embodied a certain level of,
acumen.
Mm-hmm. The trust relations seal approval. Okay, these people are actually doing trust relations, not PR. Like these people are actually doing trust relations, not PR.
Yeah.
But because it's not necessarily about level of education either. I mean, we have people on our team who were never formally trained in PR, didn't get degrees in that, and some of them are the best publicists I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have a PR degree. I'm not saying that I'm one of the best publicists you've ever seen in your life. But
you are.
All right, well, we
should wrap it up.
Wrap up our cast.
Let's do it.
All right.
Thank you for tuning in for the PR Wind Down podcast.
And thank you to Ray for joining us for a great interview.
It was a really good one. Remember to submit your own agency stories and questions and share our show with your friends and colleagues. If you subscribe and leave us a rating, it will help us reach new listeners like you.
And if you have an anonymous PR horror story of your own, please send it our way at the contact email below the episode notes.
Can't wait to wind down with you again next time.
I'm laughing at the little fuzzy cat feet kicking up in the air right now. It's too cute.
I'm so sorry. I know, it's like, I'm pretty sure this is on camera. Sorry. He's like passed out on his back like a baby.
Come for the PR advice, stay for the cat show.
I know, right? Look at these. It's like Muppet feet. What is happening over here? Sorry.
I just got a little thrown off. I love it.
I gotta move my camera so you can look.
Oh, that's a big baby.
That is what's happening below screen.
Exactly. So
Anyway.
work from home problems, right?
Yeah, exactly.